Hi, welcome back. We're going to do number 5. This one was a popular one missed, but I think that if we take a look at the answer, so if you missed this question, copy it down by pausing the video and then add in these totals. So we're missing the totals. It says there was a random sample of 50 students, so we know our grand total is 50. Then we notice here that if we add these up, we get 29. Okay? And so that means I know this number has to be 21 because I know these added up has to be 50. Hopefully that's making some sense. Now it says, what percentages of males? So that's a big deal. If it says of males, males needs to be in the denominator. Okay? So I have 21 males, which is why males is in the denominator. And that was one issue that some people made a mistake of. They put the denominator 50 and got one of these other answers. Okay, so what percentage of males felt tired? Well, see, they were a little bratty. They didn't tell us how many. But working backwards mathematically, this number has to be 12. Okay, and it has to be 12 because we know there were 50 people in here. So there's a couple ways to do this. But you may have noticed that number has to be 12. If that's going to add up to 21, that has to be 12. So this is our final answer right here. 12 out of 21 would give us that percentage. There's our answer E. Cool. Now, next question. Oh boy, this one was tricky. A couple people got it right for the wrong reason, and some people knew what they were doing and still got it wrong. So let's take a minute to think about this pie chart. The pie chart is of 50 states, okay? So all of these numbers were calculated over 50, right? The number of people that said poplar was 6% of 50. So 6% of 50 is 3. So this, we know, had to be 3 out of the 50 states said poplar. 14% of 50, so 0.14 times 50, is 7. So 7 people out of 50 said hemlock. So for some students, it might be useful to just go ahead, go back, copy down the question, and write in these percentages, and that might help. So 20% of 50 states in the Union is 10 out of 50. $16 out of 50, 6 out of 50, 5 out of 50. Okay, so it says some states have not designated tree. That's got to be false because if the states didn't designate one of these, we just threw them in the other category. All 50 states are described in our pie chart. The cottonwood is the state tree for 12 states. We see here the cottonwood is the state tree for 3 out of the 50 because 6% is 3 out of 50. Another way to do this without a calculator is notice equivalent fractions. 3 out of 50 is equal to 6 over 6 over 100. So that's what the 6% is. So it's another way to kind of think of it without having to do, even use a calculator. So this is, the cottonwood is a state tree for 6 states, not 12. Okay. Taken together, oak, pine, and maple, those are the state trees for more than half. Oak, pine, and maple. Well, adding percentages here, oak, pine, and maple would add up to 42. 42 is not, 42% is less than 50%, right? So that's not more than half the states. So that's a false statement. There are 10 states that have designated a pine tree. Bam, there are 10 states. 10 out of 50 is 20%, so that's our final answer. Last one, there's no state that has designated the eastern cedar tree. For all we know, we don't know that information. For all we know, somebody did say eastern red cedar, but if they answered 2 or fewer, right? If they answered 2 or fewer, we lump them into this other category. So notice all the numbers are more than 2. Cool. 7. Most people got this right, but let's go ahead and think about it. If you missed it, I would like it if you go ahead and make a picture. If a distribution is symmetrical, so this would be symmetrical, I'm going to fold it in half. This could also be a symmetrical, the left and the right would fold perfectly. Notice the number in the middle would have to be right here, and the mean would have to be right there. Think about adding up all that data and then dividing by all the data. The mean and the median is the same. In symmetrical data. So go ahead and write out this question for yourself if you missed it. And the right answer is the mean and the median must be pretty much equal. If the mean was greater than the median, then that means it's right skewed data. And if it's skewed data, it's not symmetrical. If the mean is less than the median, that means it's left skewed. You get the point. It's impossible to tell. It is impossible to tell the exact shape, but we know that if it's symmetrical, the left and the right are equal, meaning the mean and the median, no matter what the data is, will end up being approximately the same number. Okay. Let's look at number 8. Pretty popularly missed, but I'm hoping this will be an easy fix. We've been given a 5-number summary. So if I think of the numbers 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, I'm simply making a number line. Okay, so that's 50, that's 200. Oh, I'm going to run out of room. Let's say all the way over here is 240. Okay, so a 5-number summary, which is all they've given us, is a 5-number summary. All they've told us is the minimum is 92, the maximum is 240, 160 is the third quarter data, 110, quarter 1, and the median is here. So this is skewed data. I'm going to make a little box and whisker plot to show that off. Okay, so you see this here. What percentage is between this and this point? Well, it's got to be 75%. There's no other way to know how to calculate it because with a 5-number summary, they've divided the information into quarters, right? Even though it's 5 numbers, think about a number line. A number line, if it was evenly distributed, would have 5 bars on it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's cutting it into quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now here, even though it's not evenly spaced like a number line, this is the first quarter of the information, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. So each is 25% of the data. So this would be half the data, this would be half the data, this would be half the data. This would have to be 75% of the data. Awesome. Let's look at the last 2 questions. So if you missed these last 2, make sure you pause the video and copy them down on your piece of paper. You don't have to copy down all the choices, but definitely the question, the graph, and the answer that is correct. So let's take a look here. The sample of 25 high school students said, if you had the $1,000, which would you contribute to? Okay, so let's take a look. We need to redo totals, right? 140, add this up, I get 110. Grand total, we know, has to add up to 250. So our grand total is 250. I got some information blocking it. So let's go ahead and put it on a sticky. So I have female, male, and I know my grand total is 250 because that's the number of people we talked about. Okay, and we gave them choices: education, environmental, health, and international aid. Okay. So now they're saying which would be an appropriate conclusion to make. Well, first off, quite a few people picked E, the marginal relative frequency of the organization. Is that? That's a correct statement if this word said gender. Okay, so if you picked E, or you think you picked E, you might want to rewrite it gender. So think about, these were the marginal frequencies of gender. You could also rewrite the question, the marginal relative frequencies. So out here on the margin of gender, this is the total number of females, total number of males. Out on the margin, because you can think about flipping these, out on the margin would be other numbers for each of these. And those would be considered the marginal relative frequencies of the organizations. Next, none of the student subjects said they would contribute to religious. We don't know that. That's not an information we know. Okay, this one's the correct answer. There is no association between gender and choice. It looks like there is an association above. And the reason is, if I calculate even one or two of these, I notice that the percentages are different numbers. And that means there has to be an association. So there is an association just simply by taking, let's say, environmental. 33 out of the total of 140, so 23% of the women said environmental. 26% of the men said environmental. So notice that's a slightly different percentage. That means there must be an association, okay? Because if I know you're male, then you are more likely to have picked environmental. Now, maybe that goes to C. So it says the proportion of males who said they would contribute to the environmental is higher. Yes, the number 26 is higher than 23. So this is a true statement. Because it's true, we know there's an association. Knowing your gender will help us predict a little bit better which one you picked. This one's a distractor. We don't know exactly. Who's to say that the female, if we weren't allowed, the people that did pick environmental, who's to say that those people would pick something else as a second choice? If they picked health, just because 33% said that, that may not have been their second choice, okay? Last one, let's take a look. A small company estimates photocopies. This comes right out of the book under definition, okay? So the definition of standard deviation is this. That is what the definition is. The definition of standard deviation. So go ahead, if you missed this one, write out that the definition of standard deviation is the typical amount, a number would vary from the mean. So if the mean was 285 copies a day, the standard deviation is 24. That would mean a typical amount on any given day would be 258 plus or minus 24. That's the amount that it varies from the mean. It's the average amount a number varies from the mean. Thanks for joining us. Let me know if you got extra questions. Bye.